Anthony Joshua, one last shot at glory. Anthony Joshua stands at the crossroads of his legendary career, with one final chance to reclaim the glory that once made him the face of heavyweight boxing. But after setbacks and redemption arcs, the question remains, does AJ still have the fire to conquer the division? Or will this be his last stand in the pursuit of greatness? You know, I remember the beginning of Anthony Joshua's career. I remember when he fought, what was it, Kevin Johnson. That was a blistering knockout. He just was full of confidence, full of aggression. And then I remember the fight against Dillian Whyte, and that was a good fight because he was hurt in the second round, but he came back, he showed character, and he finished the job. And then I remember when he got his first title against Charles Martin, and Charles Martin was a southpaw, and it seemed like it could be a tricky assignment, but he just knocked him out with great timing. And then you had the Klitschko fight, and this was a dangerous affair because Klitschko, he had experience, he had speed, he had power. And I remember when Anthony Joshua knocked Klitschko down, I think in round 5, he was just that youthful power and speed, and you know, he was just on it. And then Klitschko weathered the storm and then scored that knockdown in round 6. And then logic would say that Klitschko would have the experience and would implement the experience as he did, just to control the distance, control the fight, and then probably knock Joshua out. But in round 11, Joshua rolled the dice. He rolled the dice and he got the knockout. And it's got to be said that Robert McCracken, who was his trainer at the time, did a fantastic job. And then we had the Andy Ruiz fight, and it all seemed to just go downhill. I kind of remember that fight where Anthony Joshua seemed to be doing a lot of American press, and it looked like there was going to be the transition from Anthony Joshua, you know, obviously he's massive in Britain, but then transitioning over to America. I assume he's big in America also, but there was like a conscious effort. And I think he was on The Breakfast Club, and he went into that fight, and Andy Ruiz had an impressive resume. I mean, he had a good fight, a good competitive fight with Joseph Parker. And there was also footage where the great Evander Holyfield, spoke about Andy Ruiz getting the better of him in sparring. You know, Andy Ruiz had built a good resume, and it kind of looked like that maybe they just overlooked that. Maybe they thought Andy Ruiz wouldn't be in shape or whatever. And it was a difficult one because I think Anthony Joshua was scheduled to fight Gerald Miller, but then that fight was cancelled. And I remember Anthony Joshua began the fight. He was controlling it behind a jab. He got the knockdown in round 3, went in to finish it. And the one thing Ruiz is, he's a quick counterpuncher. He's got slow feet, but he's a quick counterpuncher. Ruiz was able to be stoic, held his composure through those counterpunches. And then Anthony Joshua was in real bad trouble. And in fairness, Anthony Joshua got up. He took loads of punches. He tried to weather the storm. He showed that he had heart. He showed that he had character, similar to the Klitschko fight. But Andy Ruiz was really on it that night and scored a blistering 7th round knockout. And, you know, that was obviously a hard defeat to swallow, but in fairness to Anthony Joshua, he showed character. He came back. Andy Ruiz, allegedly, I don't even think it's allegedly, because he didn't seem to come in good. He didn't seem to come in good shape visibly, or in good fighting shape. Because there's, as I've stated before, there's looking in good shape, and then there's being in fighting shape, and it looked like Anthony Ruiz was in neither. And Anthony Joshua came back, fought a smart game plan, utilized the jab, utilized the ring, nullified Andy Ruiz's punch opportunities, and became a 2-time world champion. Big respect to him. And then he fought Usyk, and obviously Usyk has gone on to be a legend, a great. But the jury was still out on Usyk, and Usyk had a tremendous performance against Joshua. The fight was competitive up to a point, but then Usyk just took over, if I remember, in the last quarter of the fight. And and dominated at the end, nearly knocking Anthony Joshua out in the 12th round. And then in the rematch, Anthony Joshua brought in some new trainers, had a new game plan, invested in more body work, threw short punches on the inside, was more aggressive. And it appeared after round 9 that Anthony Joshua was going to be the one taking over. And then Usyk it's like he just entered the matrix and then just blitzed Anthony Joshua. And it was a very good performance by Anthony Joshua. He made amendments. He came back with a better strategy and even more determined and even more passion. But Usyk just went up the gears. We didn't know that Usyk had more gears, and he just improved exponentially. And then from there, he made a comeback. He had a sensational performance against Ngannou, real sensational performance. And let's not forget that when Ngannou fought Tyson Fury, a lot of people thought that Ngannou was not only competitive, but some people thought that he won. So when Anthony Joshua engaged in that fight, there was a lot of questions. And Anthony Joshua came in like he was like Sonny Liston. He just came in and totally obliterated, respectively, Ngannou. So you kind of felt like, okay, Anthony Joshua is back. He's back. He's got his confidence back. And then we had the Daniel Dubois situation where he got caught in round 1 with an overhand right. And then, that night, Daniel Dubois was, let's be honest, he was sensational. He came to bring it. He came to win. He was focused. He was very confident. And it was a good fight. And in round 5, I think Anthony Joshua hurt him and then went in with an uppercut. And then Daniel Dubois just threw that counter right hand and the fight was over. And now we're in a point where there's the rumor of the comeback, but we don't know who the opponent is. And then I saw an Eddie Hearn interview where they said he's going to roll the dice next year. So looking at the Anthony Joshua outfit, he currently has Ben Davidson as a trainer. I've always said Ben Davidson is a high-level trainer. He's worked with Billy Joe Saunders, good fighter, champion. Worked with Tyson Fury, one of the best fighters of this generation, just behind Usyk. And he's working with Moses Atama, who could be potentially the new heavyweight star. Only time will tell. So Ben Davidson is a high-level trainer. He's definitely a high-level trainer. And from my understanding, Ben Davidson's philosophy is not to change your boxing style, but it's just to harness it further. So he kind of adds on your strengths and he emphasizes on power, timing, and precision. And if you look, Anthony Joshua has developed a really nice pull counter, which was evident against Ngannou. Also, Ben Davidson studies opponents meticulously. He often says he does scouting reports. So I think Ben Davidson is definitely a credible, very credible trainer. And also there's a credible environment because you think in that environment you have, Moses Atama, I believe. Is Ben Davidson still training Fabio Wardley? Is he still involved with him? So you got these young lions and that energy is important. It's important when you're in a camp and you've got other upcoming heavyweights. That means good quality sparring, but the energy, it can raise your game. So I believe he's in the right environment. But then the question becomes, who should Anthony Joshua fight next? And I think there's been 4 potential people that have been mentioned. Tony Yoko is one. Martin Bakole is the second one. Jake Paul is the third one. And Deontay Wilder is the 4th one. Now, I think Tony Yoka, a lot of people don't like that fight. But I think that's a good fight for him because it's about building his confidence. Tony Yoka is a decent fighter, but from my understanding, he's not a power puncher. And this could be a fight where he can get rounds in and build his confidence. So I don't think that's a bad fight. I don't think it's a fight you can sell to the public, but it's definitely a fight where he can get rounds in, build his confidence. And if he can knock Tony Yoka out, that's brilliant. Martin Bakole, I think, is potentially a dangerous fight because Martin Bakole has a lot of potential. He has a lot of potential. I think if you look at the reference point as Joseph Parker, I think that reference point is not a good one because he only had 24 hours to prepare, and he was clearly not in fitness shape and also not in boxing shape. He wasn't in fitness shape and he wasn't in boxing shape. So that wouldn't be the good analogy. A better analogy would be what he did against Jared Anderson. He absolutely destroyed Jared Anderson. Good fighter. So I think that's too dangerous for a fight to take right now, even though that could be a big fight. And I think they were rumored to be putting that fight on in Africa. I don't really like the Jake Paul fight. No disrespect to Jake Paul. I think Jake Paul has done some good things for boxing, particularly for female boxing. He's raised the profile for female boxing. But realistically, that is a different type of event. So I think a lot of boxing purists don't like that fight. And then we have the Deontay Wilder fight. And Deontay Wilder has looked pretty bad recently. And I think initially a lot of people thought that Anthony Joshua would lose to Deontay Wilder. And he may lose to Deontay Wilder, but I think a lot of people now would think that, yeah, Anthony Joshua would definitely win that fight. And because of the CV and the marketability of Deontay Wilder, which was generated through his early knockouts and through his trilogy with Tyson Fury, which got so much attention, he is a household name. And in terms of monetary value, in terms of how much, the fight would generate, that again would be potentially a spectacular fight. And if he was to win that fight, that would really put him back into, that would put him right back into the scene, so to speak. So I think there's some interesting, I think the Tony Yoka is good to build the confidence. I think the Martin Bakole, that's dangerous. That's a dangerous fight. And if he did beat Martin Bakole, I don't think he would get the credit because of the current perception of Martin Bakole, which is unfair. And I think the Deontay Wilder fight, even though it's not the fight that it would have been in terms of the marketability, because they both have power, and some say Deontay Wilder hits as hard as George Foreman, hits as hard as Ernie Shavers. I think that fight is the one that really captures the public's imagination.